Alright, last thing I'm going to show you all for this week's videos is taking a look at all these different variable blocks that we have here. What they do, what's the point of them, and I'm sure we'll discuss in class as well, but at least you have a video now to help you with that. I'm going to go ahead and take these, or I'm going to look at the bottom of here and I'm going to start adding code down here. You'll notice again that the blocks sort of snap together. So anytime you want to take a variable or take a assignment or whatever, any of these essentially, you would grab one and you would attach it to the bottom of something else. You can add spaces, but for our purposes right now, don't worry about it. Just add them to the bottom of something else, and that way they snap on like a Lego. So let me talk about all four of these different ones. I'm going to start with this bottom one right here because it's probably the easiest to look at. This is console.log. We've seen this a little bit in the past. Essentially what console.log is, it prints out whatever you put inside of it. So for example here, console.log months, it's going to print it out down here for you to see it. So eventually when I run my code, you'll be able to see. And again, I'm at the bottom of my code, so it'll be the last thing that's printed out. You'll see it's printed out in months because I'd said months here. So that's essentially what it is. You can put variables on here as well. If I put a variable that exists, for example, my age is one that exists, I could type in my age on there and it'll print out whatever's inside of my age. So it'll display whatever's inside of my age. For example, here it's 16. All right, so that's the console.log. And that's going to be helpful for you because you'll be able to see whatever you will put inside of it in your code. And, it'll be helpful, especially if you don't have a watcher or something like that. You can print out variables. But speaking of variables, let's talk about each of these over here because they're very similar but slightly different. And you can see the instructions here give you a little bit about what each one does, but I'm just going to briefly explain it in probably like 15 seconds or less each of these. The first one right here, this is if I want to create a variable and I can name it whatever I want. Let's say I name this one my height. And you want to assign it to something. You want to put a number inside of it already. So for example here, if I know what my height is already going to be, I would then go ahead and just put in, I don't know, I'm going to put 5.9 because I'm 5'9". So that's the easy way of doing it. You're creating a variable and you're also putting something inside of it so that, anytime you use my height, 5.9 is the number that's inside. So that's the first one, declaring and setting. The second one is just called declaring a variable. And you can notice here that there's this right-hand side, the equal, and the little spot there for the number or the word that's missing from this one to this one. And it's for the exact same reason that you might think, which is this is for creating the variable, but you don't necessarily know what it is. You don't want to set it equal to something. So you just say, here's a variable, my height. I'm creating a baggie. I might use it, I might not, but here's a variable. And so that's the quick and easy way of doing that without having to set it equal to something. All right, and the last one here is x equals and then something over here. This is for when, for example here, let me go ahead and I'll use this one. I'm going to create a variable and I'm going to again call it my height. And then I'm going to say, all right, my height, before I use it, I want to make sure that I set it to something because right now it's nothing. There's nothing inside of it. So I want to set it equal to 5.9. So I'm going to say if my height equals 5.9. So it sort of accomplishes the same thing as the first one, but if you were separated by several lines of code, it would be a lot easier to see why it's useful. Awesome. The second way we can use this right here is we can say, all right, let's do a calculation on the right-hand side, and we're going to set a variable equal to that. So for example, let's say my height equals, and I'm going to go to math over here, and math is going to be helpful because math has all of these different things for adding, subtracting, multiply, divide, And I can drag any of these and put it inside of this little area over there. So I don't have to set it equal to just a number. I can set it equal to a calculation. And I'll explain why that's a little bit useful in a second. But let me go ahead and set it up. 5.9. Come on. 5. Why are you doing this to me? Okay, I have to double click. Sorry about that. And then 0.1. Oops, 0.1. So what I'm doing here, I'm going to go ahead and add a 0 here just in case so that you can see a little bit better what I'm trying to do. 0.1. There we go. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying, all right, add to my, sorry, 9. I can do 5.9 plus 0.1, set my height equal to that. Now, that's an easy way. That's just math there, right? But the easier way of seeing why this is useful is I can set a variable in here. My height. And now I can say, all right, I want my height plus 0.1, and I want to store that answer back inside the same baggie. So this is the way, think of this as almost like I grew an inch or something like that. So I set my previous height, which was 5.9, plus 0.1, and then I set my variable equal to that. And so that way, you know, at the end, if I print out over here, console.log, if I print out my variable, and I do my height is plus my height. If I do this, hopefully the last thing that's printed out is 6. So now I'm 6 feet tall. I wish. So that's the quick and easy way of doing it. So again, this is the most confusing part of all this probably, but just think, we're solving the right-hand side first. We're saying my height, which is a baggie that contains 5.9 in it, plus 0.1. And then we're setting that back into the baggie. So we're taking it out. We're taking the 5.9 out of the bag, and then we're putting the result of 5.9 plus 0.1 back into the bag again. So that way it's 6 from here on out, which is what I printed out over here. Awesome. All right, I hope that was helpful, and feel free to let us know if you have any more questions.